Hello and welcome to CEO Stories, a mini-series from the Greater Birmingham Chambers of Commerce, where we explore the journeys of some of the region's leading and up-and-coming CEOs. I'm Henrietta, Chief Executive of the Greater Birmingham Chambers of Commerce, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Simon Caulton, owner and founder of One's Trainers. Simon, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hiya, thanks for having me.
Now, Simon, I'm fortunate enough to have heard you speak at an event actually at BCU's Steamhouse Incubator a few weeks ago. But for those who are less familiar with who you are and what you do you want to give us a quick fire introduction to One's?
One's is a lifestyle leisure trainer footwear company. It's been based on inspiration through my daughter's illness, my mental health battles, and basically we've had to learn as a family how to take one step at a time. And that's really the motto and the message behind the brand. It's all about every journey starts with one step. It doesn't matter what you do in life. We're all faced with different things. We've all got to climb our own mountains, whether it's for a good thing or a bad thing. We've all got to take one step at a time. And that's where One's really comes from, and that's where the inspiration comes from.
And speaking of journeys, if we could start by going back in time with yours, what would 10-year-old Simon think about what you're doing now?
10-year-old Simon was a very excitable child. I think too many E numbers back then, or maybe. He would be elated, he'd be ecstatic. He wanted to tell all his friends, absolutely tell his friends. He'd want a pair. We didn't have that much when we were children growing up, so a pair of trainers would be something he'd really want. And I think he'd just be like, this is fantastic, you're making trainers, can I have a pair of trainers? Can all my friends have a pair of trainers? And I think he'd just be delighted that something that he could wear and represent who we are. I think that's what it would be. Very excitable.
Fantastic. And I can tell you've kept some of that excitableness throughout into adulthood. And if we go back and look at your career, before starting One's, what was your career journey like?
When I left school, I just went into builder's labour for a few years. I was making the tea, so it was very sort of dead-end type of jobs, really. But I always had an eye for engineering and mechanical, that sort of thing. And my first job really was operating a machine in an heavy engineering company. But I soon quickly got sort of into the problem solving of things, got talking to the engineers, and slowly started to move up into like a team leader's role. Went and done some training on sort of mechanical engineering. Then I studied mechanical and production engineering, which was great. Obviously, it was a good thing to have. But I was also very good as a man manager, so I kind of went the managerial path rather than the engineering path, and there was more money in it, to be honest. And I spent most of my working career in manufacturing, quality, supply chain. I've worked in many big organisations, run some big facilities with lots of people. Really my career is about production, manufacturing. I've studied Six Sigma, many other disciplines in manufacturing. And that's what I do. I implement these things in factories all over the world, to be fair.
And I know something happened that changed everything for you, and that was the illness that your daughter Mia went through. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that and how that impacted your journey?
Yeah, so in 2017, it was a life-changing day for us in July. It was a time that no parent should ever have to hear, and a journey nobody should ever have to walk. My daughter was only 7 months old, and she got diagnosed with leukemia, and everything changed that day, and it'll never be the same. We spent a long time in Birmingham Children's Hospital. She did 4 rounds of intense chemotherapy from the July to the March 2018. I was working out in China at the time, and the Far East. That's where I was predominantly based. I cut down most of my working time away, obviously to be part of my family. The intense chemo was awful. Mia went through all the side effects you can think of what leukemia and cancer patients go through. It was a tough time, a really tough time for all of us, and the surrounding family. It affected all of us. But Mia got through the 4 rounds of intense chemo. We came home in March 2018. I'd stepped away from my business at this point, at the beginning of 2018, because the grueling, intense chemo was taking its toll, not just on Mia, but also my partner Ange when I was away. So we said, right, let's just get on with this, and let's get her out of this hospital. 225 nights we stayed in Ronald McDonald charity room, just to give you some idea how long we was away from home for. And then we got back home, March 2018, we had a couple of months home, as a family, just trying to rebuild. Mia was still in treatment. She had another 18 months treatment plan where she had chemotherapy every day and one every week, which is we administered. So although I was home, it was still a very isolated place. And then after about June, July, and I said, look, one of us needs to return to work, financially and everything else. And it was just right for Ange to return to work because she was 10 minutes away. Most of my clients were 6,000 miles away. So I became stay-at-home dad, but it wasn't a stay-at-home dad, it was a stay-at-home carer. I mean, Mia needed care. Was in and out of hospital a lot. And I became isolated. I became isolated in my own home, which was really tough. I was, this person going to China and Vietnam and Malaysia and all over, to all of a sudden being stuck in four walls in my own home. And I found the whole transition really difficult. I'd become this stay-at-home person. I've always seen myself as the alpha male, the breadwinner, the old sort of school sort of man that sort of gets the food on the table and that sort of thing. And here I was having sort of an allowance off my partner to sort of live off, and I found that really tough to sort of accept. But it wasn't just that, it was the trauma of my daughter's illness, the fear of losing her, and I don't think that fear will ever leave. She was given 50% survival rate up to the age of 5. It's a long time when she was only 7 months when she was diagnosed. So the last 4.5 years has been a real tough time. But the trauma of my daughter's cancer was one, but the trauma of the things that we've seen in hospital was another. And it all just started to creep up on me. And by the time we got to sort of September, October, I was struggling. I was struggling to sort of, I'd lost my sense of purpose, my sense of self-worth. I didn't like who I was seeing in the mirror. I was becoming angry. I was just generally becoming a very insular person. And with that, I got to a stage where I was spiraling out of control. I'd lost sight of the important job that I was doing, and that was Mia's care. It was very selfish of me, but I think we have to go through that sometimes. But, I reached out, I got some professional help. But what I'd like to say is that in those months where I was at my darkest time, as a man, when I was asked if anything was wrong, I said, no, I'm fine. I'm all good. Because that's what we do. And I did it so many times. But yet inside I was falling apart. I was breaking. I was really sinking into a dark hole. But luckily I did reach out and I got professional help in October 2018. And for me, it was a life changer. And it really was. My therapist gave me the power to speak out. She gave me the power to find my own voice as a man and talk about my emotions and share the trauma that I was going through and made me feel okay to talk about it. Being with her in the office, it was a sacred place. I felt safe. I didn't feel embarrassed. I didn't talk about it because I felt embarrassed about it. I felt like I was a failure as a man. And as I say, I'm proud to actually talk about it more because I do my own talks now. I do a lot of work with Wolves Foundation at the Wolves Football Club. I do help their coach group every sort of 8 to 10 weeks. And I'm proud that I do that. I've found my voice and I'd like to try and give that inspiration to other men that are going through similar things or that are on a really dark path, just to try and help them. But it was at the darkest time that I had my brightest idea, really. I think what it was, I needed a challenge. I started to feel a little bit like my old self. My therapist was helping me to manage the mental health issues, coping mechanisms and so on. But as a person that enjoys work and he likes his career and he's always been a go-getter, I wanted to do something, I wanted a challenge. And at first I looked at just ordering some things from China and bringing it over, simply because I had enough contacts to do it. It would be quite easy. But it just didn't feel like enough. I felt I've got all this pain, this anguish and this anger, and I wanted to put it into something. I wanted to put it in something that means something. I wanted to use the pain for a purpose. I wanted to do something that represents the journey, represents where we've been.
That's incredible. I think the key theme from your story of turning that pain, turning that challenge into something positive, whether it's your mental health work and outreach or whether it's WUNS, is such a defining factor in your story. And tell us more about WUNS. What's the idea behind WUNS trainers?
As I said, it's about giving back. that's the biggest thing. I wanted to do something where I can use the profits to go back to giving back to research for cancer. When my daughter was diagnosed at 50% survival rate, we had some stories about some children 14 years ago was still 50%. It hadn't moved yet. Leukemia survival rates have got better, but anybody under 12 months, our babies, it hadn't got better, and it didn't sit right for us, and it felt like I needed to do something. So Wands itself is that every pair of trainers we sell, out of the profits, 10% of the profits will go to Blood Cancer UK, who's our partnership charity. And that is to go to trials and development and research into lymphoblastic leukemia, which is what Mia was diagnosed with. But also from that, we do a lot of work with Ronald McDonald Charity. And obviously, the more that grow my network with the ones, the more we can raise funds. And if we do an event, people can see it more because the ones network will grow because we're selling trainers and all that sort of thing. So it's about giving back. I've got an office at the incubator, and I've started to do some mentoring with the students that come from the university into there. So I'm using my experience. So this journey is about taking what I've learned, the experience I've got, the new things that I've learned, giving back to charity, but giving back to the students and anybody else that needs that sort of support and help. Because when you start with a business, it's a very long road and it's very difficult.
And how did you initially find that experience of starting a business? Because it's a completely different world, isn't it, to working in a business, to founding your own. So do you want to talk us through those early steps, how you approached finding suppliers, finding support, looking at design, all of those key aspects of that business?
The idea of the trainers was, it was all exciting. You want to make some trainers, and I was talking to sort of 3 designers at the time, because it was, I think when you're a startup and you're trying to do something new or old, I always think you've got to bring some key people in at the right times, and it is right to try and spend some money in the right areas. Cash flow is king, and and you have to maximise it as a startup in any company. But you've got to make sure you get the right people on board, and that's what I did. So the designer, I was talking to 3 designers, but the less experienced designer understood what I was trying to do. She understood the story, and we worked very well together and collaborated on lots and lots of designs. So that was all great. It was all good fun. And when all my time out in China, I was very lucky enough to meet lots of people. And there was a particular person named Doug Sheridan, and he's been in the business 40, 50 years. He's worked for Adidas, Reebok, and he does a lot of development work now for new technical things for trainers, and he's board director on certain trainer companies and shoe companies, and his experience and wealth of knowledge is just vast. So when I came up with this idea, he was the first person that I wanted to work with, and I managed to get him on board after a lot of persuasion, but I think he liked the story, and he could see that he could understand what the brand meant and what it represented. He could see what I was doing with the designs of the trainers, and I wanted it to be a lightweight trainer, more of a leisure trainer than a running trainer, and so on. So I was lucky really to get him on board to give me that support from a product point of view. All that was great, but then you've got all the other stuff for the business. You've got the financial stuff. You've got the carbon footprint stuff now that you have to be mindful of. I wouldn't say it's new, but you have to be really sustainable and everything else. Then there's the website, and then the warehouse, and then the shipping, and there's a whole host of things. And I'm lucky because I've been experienced to be doing a lot of supply chain and quality and things. So I was use a lot of my own experience. But one thing I have found with a startup entrepreneur is finding the right information has been very difficult. And what you remember, I was working out my spare bedroom, still looking after Mia. So it's kind of, I was isolated anyway. So I think being an entrepreneur or a startup, you are already isolated. I was probably more isolated. So it was difficult to find the right information. So my financials, I'd done them myself, but you just want somebody to look over them. So you don't pay an accountant, or you don't want to pay somebody as such. You don't mind paying them, but you just want somebody to say, you've missed this bit, or you've missed this bit, or just look at this. And it just wasn't available. And if you did find it, they did just want a lot of money for a small amount of work. And it was tough. And I did find that very hard. And I think when you're going through that journey, the incubator, if I can talk about the incubator just slightly, when I joined the incubator in March 2020, I was the first one to sign up, by the way. That was exactly what people need as a startup and entrepreneur, somewhere they can go and mix with other entrepreneurs and startups, and also then talk to Richard Scott, who's the program manager there, and he will put you in front of these people. And they've got an invested interest to help you, but they don't want money. And I think that is a key thing. I think a lot of businesses, startups, they might have a great idea, but I think sometimes they fail because they get frustrated trying to get all the dots to connect before they even launch, or when they do launch, they didn't get all the dots connect to start with, and it fails. And I can see that now. I mean, I'm shipping goods in from abroad, and there's so many aspects of it. I mean, I've done shipping, but when you're actually shipping things for yourself, the different charges that are involved and everything else, it's phenomenal. It really is. It is that blows your mind financially and mentally.
And that's the BCU Steamhouse Incubator, isn't it? Which is a fantastic project in the city. So, speaking of shipping, speaking of doing business internationally, a little thing happened in March 2020 that threw a lot of people's plans out of the window. What impact did the pandemic have on you and your business's aspirations?
So when I joined the incubator, I was about to launch. I was hoping to launch sort of August, September 2020. And we kind of postponed the launch. I joined the incubator thinking, right, I've got more support around me now, so when I launch, I'll be in a better position. And then 3 weeks later, we went into lockdown. Obviously, we didn't expect it to last as long as we did, and it lasted 20-odd months, I think it was in the end. It was all sort of isolated away. It was a tough time for us because obviously Mia was still classed as vulnerable, so we couldn't really enjoy going out too much, even though we had a great summer. But obviously I postponed the launch, which was the one thing. But then as we come out of COVID, if you remember, sort of August, September, I think it hid for a couple of weeks, didn't it? We all come out for a while. And so we sort of started the conversations with the factory and the manufacturers and so on. And they sort of went really quiet, and they turned around and said, look, so I'm really sorry, but we can't support you like we was going to support you the pre-pandemic financially and all these other things. So I actually found myself in September last year, middle of the pandemic, without a manufacturer. So here I was about to launch, then all of a sudden I'm here and I've got nobody to make these shoes, and they were just being signed off. And that was tough, but again, because I've been so far down the road with the manufacturers and things like that, we did find somebody else. It was difficult, it was strange. I would have probably gone over to look at the factory, but we did it all virtually now. So we talked to the factories virtually, and we did a lot of changes to the products. Obviously, we moved the product from one place to another. But then when we started to make it, there weren't materials available. Then the increased costs come on top of it. Then when they did go into production, there was virus outbreaks, so the production stopped, and then it started again. But then they couldn't get the supply from other factories because they were having a problem with it, and it was just ongoing. So I went into 2021 this year hoping to be up and running by about the same time, August, September. That was kind of the plan. But there's been so many variations, uncontrollable variables, really. The cost, the shipping delays, the production delays. I mean, where the product was being made, they actually had a few power cut issues, which, knocked the factory out for a couple of weeks. There's nothing I control. I can't control it. But again, it's that waiting around. So the pandemic for me has been a totally business change. I've had to totally change the business model, because where the factory was going to send smaller batches that we sort of get into a small warehouse and I sort of pick and pack and post, I've now got to buy a container. So I'm going into 2021 having to find a huge investment that I didn't have to find in 2020. And that was hard. I'm a business startup, never sold a product, and I've got to find a massive investment now to buy some product. Then the shipping cost had quadrupled as well, so I had to find the extra cost for that. So I've found this year to be very testing and very frustrating. And I think everybody in business will tell you the same thing. But when you haven't sold anything, it's very hard for people to get open the doors and get people to listen to you and sort of invest in you or loan your money and things like that. I've been lucky that I've got some extremely kind friends, which has been great. I took a startup loan out, but when I took the startup loan out, that really was for website marketing, because it's all online. Obviously, the marketing's key. I know that I've got to spend as much as on marketing as I did on the container. I've had to use a proportion of it now just to pay for the shipping, because it's gone up so much money, but I need the product, so I've had to pay for it. So I found myself now at this stage where the money that I was going to plough in, I was going to do these adverts, I was going to do this. I can't do it now. I can only do probably a third or a half of what I could. And the website's fine. It's a website, but I would have liked to have had it better. The plan that I had was this. So, I've had to change the business plan. I've had to find investment. I've had to change a lot of things. And at times I felt like, is it worth it? I felt like it a few times and just thought, it's just costing too much money. I didn't expect it to cost this much money. I've put, it's all been self-financed up to that point. So it's been, the pandemic hasn't been very kind, to say the least.
How have you maintained your sort of energy and enthusiasm for the business during all of that?
I've never forgotten what my why is, and my why is my family and my daughter. When you see a member of your family, especially a child, go through what Mia's gone through, this is nothing. She had to go through hell, and we went through hell with her. So I always take me back to that place. I take myself back to the hospital, and I take myself back to when she was really struggling with the chemo, and all of the children were struggling and things like that. And I think, well, if she's got the strength and the courage to get through what she got through, then this should be, I wouldn't say it's a breeze, but it allows you to take another step, take that one more step. Hence why the journey is about taking step at a time, because that's what it is. That's what we've had to do. That's how I get through it.
And speaking of big steps, as we're speaking today, you're incredibly close to launching your first range, aren't you? Did you say the shipping containers in the Mediterranean?
It is. We had confirmation of that early in the week. Unfortunately, it was delayed by a couple of days because of weather, but it's getting closer. I can almost touch it. It's due to land here early part of next week. So the plan is to put a pre-order on by the end of next week, so people can start ordering them. So those lovely people that have been following the journey and have been so lovely and give me so many wonderful messages and keep me going, please, now is the time to really dig deep into your pockets. And hopefully by the end of next week we should be selling trainers, and the week after dispatching them. And obviously the big thing is raising money for charity. It goes back to charity. That's what we have to remember. That's the why. It's why we're doing this. It's about selling as many trainers as we can. Of course, there's a commercial aspect to it. I want to leave a legacy of my daughter. I want to leave something that she can be proud of. She wants to, she looked and thought, wow, I went through that journey, but look what Dad did. Go back to 10-year-old Si, being excitable about it, looking back and saying, wow, my dad did this. And it was for her. Of course it was. So I think that's what it is. So, that's where we are, and it's almost getting exciting. I think once they land here and I see the container, it's been emptied, I see all the boxes with ones on it, then I think I might just have a little glass of champagne just to celebrate. We'll see.
You'll have earned it. And I have to say, I've been lucky enough to see some of your samples, and I'm a big fan of your trainer design, actually.
Oh, thank you.
I think you can tell how much thought and love has gone into the design of these trainers. And do you want to tell us a little bit about their environmental credentials? Because that was one of the things I found really interesting that had gone into that thought on the design.
Yeah, I think if you look at my social media, it's an organically grown one. And it's very transparent. It's very transparent where any funds that we raise, anything that we've done, you can see where the money goes. And I think that's important. And I think when you're looking at eco-friendly, sustainable, there's a lot of, we all say we're sustainable, all these companies, but they don't always, you can't always sort of see what it is and what they do. So I really thought about who I wanted a partnership up with start with. And I now partnership up with a company called Bloom. They're an American-based company. And what they've done, they harvest the algae off the top of, lakes and things like that. Algae is such an eco killer. It kills the ecosystem in the water, the fish and all those sort of things. Well, they've managed to take this, they harvest it and turn it into plastic pellets. And then those plastic pellets then can be mixed with EVA, which is the soles of trainers, all sorts of plastics like this microphone. It can be put into there. But the clever aspect of it is that I can tell you my trainers are 238 grams, which is as light as a running trainer, by the way. And in that, we can tell you the percentage of Bloom that we've put in. We're putting 64 litres of water, clean water, back into the environment, and 34 cubic meters of air, clean air, back into the system per pair of trainers. So that's what I like about it. It's a tangible. I think it goes back to my manufacturing, the KPIs and things like that. I like it because you can see what it's doing for the environment. And it's the start, it's the step, it's the first step of sustainability. The plan would be, if the business does what I wanted to do in sort of 5 years' time, I'd like to be at least 80% eco-friendly, sustainable with all the product. So what I'd probably do is the range that I'm about to launch, although it's only a small amount of sustainable, I want to sort of evolve it almost every year and add more sustainable. Because the other thing as well, although we all want to be sustainable, it's actually very expensive. It did put the cost up of the trainers per pair quite considerably. But it was something I always wanted to do from the beginning of the project, and I'm pleased that it's that I've chose, and the transparency that you get with it.
And how much are the trainers per pair? Because this was something that pleasantly surprised me when we met. I was sort of walking over to your stand expecting you were going to turn around and go, oh, they're about £150 a pair, but they're actually surprisingly affordable.
Yeah, look, because the journey I've been on, I want to try and make these affordable. I want to target certain areas as well. So, we've gone for a very lightweight trainer. We've used excellent materials. We haven't cut back on materials. We haven't cut back on the production and things like that. Doug, I've always mentioned, he certainly wouldn't allow me to do that. So we put them at $64.99. So that's the retail price. And again, 10% of that will always go to Blood Cancer UK.
That's fantastic. And I have to say, I'm looking forward to ordering my first pair.
Good.
So for anyone who's thinking, where can I get my hands on some ones? Where would you recommend?
So you can go to the website, which is ones.co.uk. It's quite simple. Or you can go to the social medias, which is Ones Leisure Trainers. All the information's on there. I mean, obviously, over this next week, the website will become an e-commerce platform. It's just a holding page at the moment. That should be up and running by the middle of next week, obviously, so you can pre-order. So, ones.co.uk.
Fantastic. And I know, thinking about your career journey and people who have inspired you, of course, Mia and your wife, Angela, have been huge inspirations to you. But thinking about the outside your family, are there leaders and individuals that have really inspired you along the way?
Yeah, and I think if I look at my career, I've got to go to my early career, really. When I was working at the factory where I first started on the machine, I got sort of into this managerial role, team leader role. But I then left there, and Chris Whitaker, who was the head of production and quality at Lucas Salford, he gave me my first break. I was a shift manager. I was mid-20s. I'd not really got much experience, but I think he obviously seen something in me. And Chris was very KPI driven, probably too much for the manufacturing. But what he did, he installed that into me about measuring things, measuring performance, measuring people. And I think that was a great thing for me, great turning point. And Chris taught me a lot about managing the performance level and that sort of thing. Very, very good. And then when I moved from there, it was Neil Sproston, who was at a company called Ventaxia. Now, Neil was completely opposite. He did like his KPIs, but he's very analytical. Very analytical. He liked his numbers, his P&L, his spreadsheets and things like that. So I got a good side of that sort of the business, which I think is important in any business, is to understand the numbers, understand how much it's costing. So you can be building hundreds of thousands of products, but it doesn't mean saying you're making any money. And Neil was very good at that. I think they're two of the people in my early career. And if I come recently, it'd be Doug Sheridan. He's been phenomenal. His knowledge and experience in the trainer market world is just unbelievable. He worked with Manchester University and a company called Innovate. They make cross trainers. And, they were putting different compounds together, and they were the first people to do certain compounds that they now use. And they put graphene, that's it. They put the graphene compound into a sole, which makes the sole last longer. And he was part of the team that does that. He's on the board of directors of Native Shoes, which make completely 100% sustainable products. And he's already said, hopefully, once we're all running, we'll do some collaboration work with some of his companies as well. So yeah, Doug has been phenomenal, and he's been like a mentor without being a mentor. And he's been very open with the information. He's been very good at telling me. And he's also been very good at telling me what doesn't work as well. So it's been good. Yeah. So I would have said those three people certainly spring to mind.
Fantastic. And I think what you can hear so loud and clear throughout your career journey is how every step of the way you've learned things, you've met people that have then helped you with this transition into becoming an entrepreneur and running your own business. So it's been fascinating to hear. I have one final question for you. And that is, if you could offer just one piece of advice to an aspiring CEO, what would it be?
This is in two parts, okay? And then the first part is, if you feel you need to spend some money and get some professional help in, then please do it. Don't think you can do it all on your own. And the second part of that is, if your gut tells you, trust me, you're probably right. Go with your gut. 99% of the time is that it is the right decision to do. I've made that decision. I said when I started Wands, I will go with my gut. And I've done it so far. And I've not been too far wrong, to be fair, with people and decisions I've made. So that would definitely be the thing to do.
Thank you so much for joining us, Simon. And I think we're going to have you back in future to hear about how the launch of Wands has gone as well.
I'd love to.
Thank you all for listening at home as well. Of course, you can subscribe to find more CEO stories wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to follow us on the social medias. That's at GRB Ham Chambers on Twitter, Greater Birmingham Chambers of Commerce on LinkedIn. Thank you very much. And Simon, thanks once again. It's been great speaking to you.
Thanks for having me.